Hey Daniel, how you doing?
Shalom, Erev Tov. How are
Great.
you?
Welcome to our everybody should be welcome to our first episode of Tarek Kohanim on the front lines. And we've waited a long time with the war and everything to start this series. Hopefully more and more people can tune in. And just to show everybody our thoughts on what exactly is going on here in the front lines in Jerusalem, Eretz Israel. Um, so Daniel, let's start with the big story all over the world. Really, it's overshadowing everything. Um, Crash in the markets, new vice presidential choice from Kamala Harris. We are the big story, right? The impending Iranian attack on Israel. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think are the possibilities here?
Well, first of all, we're in the period of the 9 days within the 3 weeks. So, on one level, we could be in for something very serious because we've got a lot of history of bad things happening in this period, although it has enormous potential for the good. We know these days can be turned into simcha, can be turned into good, depending on what we do. This whole war really centers around Jerusalem. And yes, of course, we're waiting what's going to happen. But at some point, we shouldn't just be sitting ducks. At some point, if we know that all the hatreds, the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas and Iran, they've all sworn that they want to destroy the Jewish state. They've all sworn that there's going to be a reaction. They're going to do A, then we should be doing something. We should be proactive. How that expresses itself is an interesting question. Well, what we do if we are going to be, because just sitting back like sitting ducks is a problem, number one. The second major problem that I'm sensing, and it's been in the air for the last 10 months, is the stab in the back of our sovereignty. The Rambam, as we know, Maimonides says the true sign of the redemption process of the Messiah is when the Jewish people have their own true sovereignty. If you think you're a star on someone else's flag, it's a problem. And we're reading in the newspaper, how true it is, I'm not sure. But if it's true that America, European countries are saying to Israel, calm down, maybe you shouldn't react, maybe don't be proactive. Even if they do something, don't respond in a harsh way. Did the world say that when the coalition went into Iraq, when they went to Afghanistan? What is this hypocrisy, this double standard of telling Israel we're under attack by millions of Arabs that want to destroy us, that we have to calm down? We have an enemy on our back doorstep. We have an enemy amongst us, literally in our dining room sometime, not just on the back doorstep. And we have to protect our own interests. When we do that, when the Jewish people and we as a Jewish state are able to say to the world, "Die, enough is enough, we are responsible for our own people, our own destiny," then we'll know that we've reached another level in this redemption process that we've already started. But that takes it takes special leadership.
Definitely. I mean, we've already seen that in terms of the prime minister ordering people into Rafah against the wishes of the administration. So there are times here that we're pushing forward, albeit it's in a very strange way, but we do push forward. Um, I guess one of the questions probably people are wondering how are the Arabs in Eastern Jerusalem? I don't want to call it East Jerusalem, Eastern Jerusalem, the neighborhoods in the eastern part of the city. Um, so far, right? So far, they've been relatively quiet. There's been uptick a bit in the beginning, and then boom, the Magav, the border police were allowed to do what they needed to do. Do we have a sense? I know there's reports that some of the retaliation might come from Judea and Samaria. I'm wondering, maybe you are also that. Does that mean Eastern Jerusalem as well, or is there going to be, uptick in violence from there? I don't. I personally don't sense it when I've been there, but I don't know what the rumors are in terms of beyond experience.
We have to definitely be on our guard for anyone to assume for even a second that the Arab in certain neighborhoods in Jerusalem is totally different from the Arabs in Judea Samaria or totally different from the Arabs in Gaza. Or you're mistaken. It's a major problem that we have to be very wary of and careful. And in fact, the police and the Border Patrol police, because of the 7th of October, actually added extra police and extra Border Police in our neighborhoods. in addition to the fact that, of course, that, security guards and many of the fathers, went down south to fight, went up north to fight and defend, etc. And the neighborhood it needed some extra security. I think also the attitude, and that's something which is very special. I think there's a certain attitudinal switch. I don't know how much that has to do with the minister at the top or just a feeling post the 7th of October, but there's definitely a sense of there is an enemy there, and I'm ready to act. Like 2 years ago, when tens of Molotov cocktails and concrete rocks and stone barrages were thrown at our families on a daily basis, nothing much would be done. Nothing much could be done. Maybe have a look on the cameras, maybe arrest someone, maybe it'll be a let it go. Today, you start to throw a Molotov cocktail, you'll be shot. It's not like they're worried about the lawyer or this and that over their shoulder. There's attitudinal change. And I'm not sure what instructions have been given, but I hope this keeps on going, because we have an enemy on our back doorstep. That doesn't mean to say that it's every single Arab, but we have to nevertheless still be careful about every single Arab. I mean, it doesn't take much, even for an Arab in Jerusalem, that his cousin who lives in Jenin is involved in terrorist activity. He's been killed, and suddenly something switches in his mind, and he becomes a terrorist also here. We have to be very careful. We have to show strength of conviction, show strength in general, and not pretend that putting up a fence or cameras is going to make a difference. We have to be a lot more proactive, and as much as we may not be able to, Ateret Kohanim, we may not be able to send planes all the way to Iran. We're not going to be involved in sending the Secret Service and the Mossad into Lebanon and whatever. But we have enormous power to send the biggest messages possible here in Jerusalem. If this war is all over Jerusalem, so as we know, they call it the El Aqsa flood, then the way to counter that is to send a message about Jerusalem. They want to take away Jewish life in Jerusalem. They want to take away sovereignty in Jerusalem. Then that's why we're at the forefront, because by adding sovereignty, by adding Jewish life to the heart of Jerusalem, it is the biggest message and the biggest proactive move that could possibly be done, sending a message to every one of those H's. Hezbollah, Hamas, and now we have our own H. The heavenly dome. I always talk about this heavenly dome as opposed to the iron dome that we relied upon too much. We have this heavenly dome, and we have to act for the Jerusalem dome also.
Very nice. I guess it's a good segue to one of the projects we're all working on in the Ateret Kohanim is the Yemenite Beit Knesset. That this Beit Knesset that was really squatted in for many decades by I can't even call them local Arabs, because they themselves, right, came from outside of Jerusalem, right, in 1948 when the Jordanians controlled it, and they kicked the other Arabs out and squatted in the Beit Knesset. And so, thankfully we have taken back the Beit Knesset, right, legally speaking, and people live there, and now it needs to be renovated. I mean, what are your thoughts, the connection between that and the 9 days and ultimately this war? Like you just spoke very, very much about counteracting Iran and the Arabs over Jerusalem, because that really is the wars over Jerusalem. How do you see the Yemenite Beit Knesset really being fit into that story? And it really is a part of that puzzle.
I see this so much connected. Things are unfolding now. You have to be either blind or a fool not to see what is taking place here. The 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, in fact, this whole 9-day period leading up to Tisha B'Av started with rejecting Israel with the spies, rejecting Jerusalem, going into Jerusalem, was about the destruction of Jerusalem, the main heavenly Beit Knesset, the Beit HaMikdash. It's all about that destruction and our distancing ourselves from Jerusalem. The only message, the only way to reverse that is, and as much as we may not be able to build the Beit HaMikdash at the moment, the temple at the moment, there are some things we have to do ourselves as a people, the physical redemption. That is the Jewish life around the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is number one. There are issues that maybe God will deal with. Maybe we will deal with at a later stage. But at this stage, what is in our hands is actually being able to redeem and to rebuild Jewish life and a synagogue right outside the Temple Mount itself. Yes, they were illegal squatters. The Supreme Court of Israel no one should ever say that this was done by some right-wing fanatic. The Supreme Court of Israel ruled, after many years, ruled that it was a synagogue, that the Arabs were illegal squatters, that it was part of a sanctified trust, and this sanctified trust has got back the synagogue in its hands, and together with Atzeret Kohanim and Jews around the world, we're trying to restore the Lamb Yemenite heritage and synagogue complex. And God willing, it'll happen. It's a huge project, yes. But could you imagine the glory that we're bringing back to sanctifying God's name, sanctifying the Jewish people, and having the light in all physical and a spiritual sense come out once again from this the Lamb Yemenite heritage and synagogue complex in the middle of the Yemenite village. And by the way, the court ruling was very interesting. The court ruling that spoke about the synagogue also spoke about the trust, which is far bigger than the synagogue, which means that there's quite a few Arabs who are unfortunately still squatting in a number of properties. Some of it is unfolding in the courts. Some things have already been finished with a number of court cases that have been won by the Sanctified Trust. And God willing, we will see the synagogue restored to its previous glory, because only by doing things like that can we possibly hope to reverse this semi-mourning period between the straits in these 9 days. It's a message that has to be sent in the middle of this El-Aqsa flood. The only way to survive the El-Aqsa flood is to, first of all, if we're united in the Jewish Ark. I call it the Jewish Ark or the Jerusalem Ark. When we're together united over Jerusalem, floating in this special united nation over Jerusalem, that's how we can survive any flood and anything they throw at us.
Very nice. I mean, I guess that's it. I think that's the way to end the program. I mean, let's give a quick shout out to our newest property, right? Beit Gitta in the Northern Jewish Quarter, what the rest of the world calls Muslim Quarter. We call the Northern Jewish Quarter, the Old Jewish Quarter. It's really a magnificent property, renovated beautifully, and a family that's been living, I believe in the Old City for a while, moved in this past week, and just another stepping stone to more and more sovereignty for the Jewish people in their ancient in our ancient capital, eternal capital. So
we've now got 35 families living in the Flowers Gate area. The building was actually redeemed a while ago, but it sometimes takes a little bit of time to renovate it and make it ready and possible for another family to move in. Interestingly enough, 200 years ago, that area was packed, literally packed in at least 40 compounds. Most people don't even realize it by the students that go on. When they realized they were being punished, something that we can't say today, they were being punished with an epidemic and a plague and an earthquake, and thousands of Jews died, literally in Svat and Tveria in the early 1800s. They said, this is happening to us because we forgot Jerusalem. And they came and they trekked. It wasn't so easy because these Ashkenazi Jews, they had certain other issues, which we can go into another time. But eventually they came and they lived in this northern sector of the old city between the Lions Gate and the Flowers Gate, where today we have, thank God, a number of Jewish homes, and now there's an additional Jewish family there in Beit Gitta. So a mazel tov to everyone. Thank you to all of those who participated in that. And there's a lot to be done to participate and help secure the Jerusalem Dome in this time of war, but we will be successful. And let me just finish on a note that it may seem problematic and we have many enemies around us, but as the chosen people, as the people of God, there are enough things that the prophet said that we will be secure. We will come out of this even stronger and better and holier than it was before, because as the true sons of Abraham, no one is going to move us, not from Israel and not from Jerusalem.
Praise God. Daniel, until next week.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.